Game Week 10 is here, so it's time to lock in those FPL teams. Welcome to FPL Mate, my name is Dan, and today, since it's Halloween, I have dressed up as the scariest thing for an Arsenal fan, and that is a referee. Guys, let's get on with the video. So I know you're probably very tempted to call me FPL Mate, because obviously what I'm dressed as, but, I mean, looking at the point score I cooked up in Game Week 9, maybe you should be calling me FPL Mate, because we are on another nice big green arrow with 74 points for Game Week 9, bringing me finally into the top million ranks. And it seems like my team is going from strength to strength at the moment. It's really, really positive. Still no wild card used, and even though the triple captain was objectively a failure, I don't feel too bad because the rest of my team did quite well. So a little bit disappointed by my triple captain score. I thought Haaland should have scored 3 goals in that game easily. He had so many big chances to score, and it's very rare that you see Haaland get so many chances to score, and even rarer that you see him miss so many chances. So really, really strange one, but that's football. You've got to take these things on the chin and look at the positives, because there were certainly a lot of positives in my team. Unexpected clean sheet points from Henderson in goal, Gavardio doing well, getting the bonus points, which made me feel a bit better about Haaland not getting the bonus points. Palmer and Burmo coming in clutch there as well. And how about Jamie Vardy scoring a goal? Could have even got a penalty in that game, actually. I thought he should have had a penalty against Forest, and maybe could have even scored more. But overall, it's pretty good. 74 points is definitely something to be pleased with, and there's a lot of positives to be taken from my team. And given that I still haven't wildcarded, I've got transfers, I've got money in the bank. Honestly, I think we're going to move from strength to strength here. So let's move on to Game Week 10 and see if we can push up even further in the league table. That's a yellow card for you because you haven't liked the video yet. If you don't like the video, you could be getting a second yellow and therefore a red. So yeah, please do like the video. Massively helps out the channel, and do subscribe if you're new around here as well. Otherwise, you'll be off, son. Right, with that said, let's move to my Game Week 10 team. We've got a free transfers to use, as I mentioned, and I think following the League Cup results, I have changed my mind a little bit on what I'd like to do. So let's go through my team and I'll share with you my thoughts. So first of all, in goal, we do have Dean Henderson, who after a tricky game against Spurs, has a nice couple of fixtures coming up against Wolves, and Fulham at home, I think, is not a bad fixture either there. So happy with Henderson. Yes, he's dropped down in price to 4.4 million, but I think at this kind of price range, it's one of those things. Sometimes if you just pick a cheap goalkeeper and just leave them in your team, they will just gradually tick along and pick up those points. Sometimes you'll expect them, sometimes you won't. Sometimes it'll be save points, but no clean sheets. But overall, I'm pretty pleased with what he has produced over the last month or so. So I'm happy to leave him in my team, really. For a cheap goalkeeper, he's doing exactly what I want him to do. So moving on into defense, Trent Alexander-Arnold has been a little bit disappointing over the last 2 game weeks, but we have to put that in context. He's just played Arsenal and Chelsea back-to-back, 2 of the best goal-scoring teams in the Premier League, and therefore, what were we expecting realistically? I think Trent is one of those long-term holds, and even though his points haven't necessarily reflected what he's done on the pitch, what we have seen throughout this season is that he has been one of the most creative players in the entire Premier League. 17 key passes already, 5 big chances created, 3.05 expected assists, and playing for a team like Liverpool, you would expect the high quality of finishers in the team to be converting the high volume of chances that Alexander-Arnold is creating. And no, that hasn't really happened too much yet, but we can't really judge him on what has happened. What we can do is try and figure out what is likely to happen in the future. FPL points are a useful way of judging how good an FPL asset is, but I don't think it is the best way to judge how useful an FPL asset is in the future, because past points, well, they've got nothing to do with future points. Just because a player blanks last week doesn't mean they're going to blank the next week. So, couple of weeks in the next 3, more opportunities for clean sheets, and also more opportunities for him to get forward and be a little bit more creative. He has been creative already. Can his teammates start finishing off the chances that he produced? I think there is no reason why they wouldn't. So still very happy with Trent as a long-term hold in my team, although I understand that some people might think he is a little bit too expensive for them. For me, I don't believe that. Robertson, I can't make the same argument for. Unfortunately for Robertson, since I brought him in, yes, he's got a few clean sheets there, with Liverpool still leading the way as the #1 defence in the Premier League. However, Robertson not really getting involved in attacks really at all this season. He's had a few creative moments, but nowhere near as many as Trent. And the big concern for me with Robertson is that he hasn't quite looked himself. I think he's looked a little bit off it recently, maybe not playing with confidence, maybe looking a little bit weaker. And I do worry, particularly with Robertson playing the League Cup game in the midweek, playing the whole game, I do worry that Tsimikas may be in line to start in game week 10 against Brighton, and Robertson may be relegated to the bench because he was playing in that kind of second-ish string team for Liverpool midweek. We've already seen Robertson bench for Tsimikas already this season. Can it happen again against these slightly weaker oppositions, I suppose, where Slot can afford to, I don't know, be a bit more experimental? I think Tsimikas may suit the Slot system a little bit more. I'm not saying Tsimikas is going to play every single game week, and I think there might be some rotation here, but what I am concerned with is Robertson's, how secure his minutes are going forward. And when you're paying 6 million for a defender and you're not getting any attacking threat from them, or at least not very much attacking threat, I do feel like you need minute security at the very least. So Robertson is just not able to provide that for me anymore, and he is a major concern over the next few game weeks. I'm sure a lot of you guys have also been saying to me, Dan, you need to start pulling some money out of the defense. And I do agree with you. It's just been finding that right moment to do it. Or up until now, I haven't really found any defenders that I would love to buy, but I think that is going to start to change moving forward. But it gets from bad to maybe worse in my defense, as we have got Gavardio here as well, who picked up a potential head injury, maybe a concussion. Difficult to tell exactly what went on with Gavardio, but he was receiving treatment after the game, I think after a collision. So I'm very curious to see whether Gavardio is going to be available for game week 10 or not. There is a chance that he won't be against Bournemouth. I hope he is, because I think he's been brilliant. We know that Man City have been putting up good defensive numbers, at least, even though they haven't necessarily been keeping clean sheets every week. But a clean sheet last game week, and Gavardio, being so involved, picks up those bonus points very, very naturally when City do keep a clean sheet. And his attacking involvement is very nice as well. He's always in and around the box, taking shots, creating for his teammates as well, which is exactly what you like from a defender in the world of FPL. So I would love to keep Gavardio in my team, but I may be forced to do something here. So let's see how that goes. We will have a look at my bench to see if I can maybe cover the likes of Robertson and Gavardio, but I'm not totally sure. In midfield, we have got Cole Palmer against Manchester United with a new manager bounce. Really, you just have to put the faith in Palmer as a player that he might be able to produce here. I'm not totally convinced. I'm not totally confident, because even though Manchester United do concede a lot of chances, you have to say that they have a knack of keeping clean sheets. I don't know. Maybe that will change under the temporary management of Ruud van Nistelrooy. I suppose we'll see. But Palmer, as we know, is a brilliant player. And if he gets penalties, if he's getting those set pieces, and if Manchester United do concede a lot of chances, then Palmer is going to be involved. I don't think this is a game where Palmer is captain material necessarily, but every game is an opportunity for this guy, other than maybe the toughest of tough games, like your Arsenals, Liverpools, and Man City. So I don't mind Palmer for Manchester United, this Manchester United game, but I'm not going to pretend that this is an amazing one. What I can say is Palmer's numbers are brilliant, and he is a brilliant football player, and I'm very glad I own him for the long term. Say that at least. We've got next Brian Mbeumo. Strength to strength is the theme of this video, because Mbeumo absolutely cooked last game week. 15-pointer, bringing his total goal tally to 8 goals this season, which is absolutely brilliant. I know I've mentioned this many times before, but Mbeumo has still not got an assist this season, and similar to Trent, he is creating a lot. 17 key passes, 5 big chances created. That's the same as Trent Alexander-Arnold. Slightly lower XA, but I would like to see Mbeumo add some assists to his game, because we know how good he is. And we don't love this fixture against Fulham. Fulham have actually been one of the tougher defences this season, kind of sitting around just above mid-table for those defensive numbers. Yes, they've only kept 1 clean sheet so far, but they don't give away a huge amount of chances when you compared to some of the other teams. So Fulham are kind of one of those teams that maybe concede 1 goal per game-ish, roughly. So I don't think this is a great fixture, but this is Brian Mbeumo, and he is just in the form of his lifetime at the moment. We've got Brennan Johnson next, Aston Villa at home. I like that it's a home game, and I think, unlike Solanke, Johnson is at least getting in those dangerous areas and looking dangerous for potentially scoring goals. The blanks have been a little bit frustrating, but with Johnson, you know you have those opportunities to score at least, and that is half of the battle with any FPL asset. After the Ipswich game, I think it might be time to move him on, however. And finally, in midfield, I am going to go for Emil Smith-Rowe. Yes, indeed. We're going to have a look at my bench shortly, who might have a player that some of you might want to play. But I love this Brentford at home fixture. I think because people have been watching Brentford and seeing them perform so well in the attacking point of view, and Brentford are kind of winning games and doing well, they kind of maybe ignored the fact that Brentford have been terrible defensively. I mean, I've watched a few Brentford games recently, and they're just defensively all over the place. They are an attack-first team, and that's why currently for non-penalty expected goals against, they are sitting in 17th right now. Only the 3 newly promoted teams are putting up worse defensive numbers than Brentford right now. And in terms of, shots conceded, they're actually the 2nd worst in the Premier League so far this season. So only Leicester have conceded more shots than Brentford this season. So any attacking player, I think you absolutely have to play against Brentford at the moment. They have to be considered one of the weakest defences in the league. And even though Smith-Rowe has been playing, a slightly more reserved role in the more difficult games, what we've seen from him in the easier fixtures, he does have a lot more licence to get forward, make those late runs into the box, little dribbly runs, creating as well. So overall, I do really like Smith-Rowe for this fixture. And I was kind of looking at the predicted goal scoring odds, the projected goals for various players, and I believe Smith-Rowe is slightly ahead of a player like Rodgers, for example. So these two players, they put up very similar numbers, Rodgers and Smith-Rowe. I'm going to play Smith-Rowe ahead of Rodgers because of the better odds, the better fixture, even though in general the two players are about on even pegging at the moment. Up from Erling Haaland, still got this guy in my team. I'm sure a lot of you guys will be looking to sell, but I think I'm keeping him, to be honest, at this moment. Bournemouth, I know, is not a great fixture generally, but I think stylistically, it suits Haaland a little bit more than maybe some of the recent games he has blanked in. And against Southampton, we did see that despite a lot of players being missing from Man City, Haaland still is involved, or can be very much involved, can still get plenty of chances to score. I know that was Southampton. I know Bournemouth are slightly different, but I look at the stylistic similarities maybe between Bournemouth and Southampton compared to like a Wolves or a Newcastle, who Haaland did struggle against a little bit more. So I wonder if from a matchup point of view, this might be a little bit better. Of course, no surprise to see that Haaland has really high projected goals for this game week. 0.81. That is the highest projected goals of any player if you are someone who likes those kind of odds and stuff like that. So moving on next to, this guy, Raul Jimenez. Brought him in last game week, a blank, but he looked brilliant. Watch the full game. First game with Raul Jimenez in my team. I thought, I'm going to sit down. I'm going to watch the whole thing. Let's see what he can cook up against Everton. And he was getting chances to score. A little bit unlucky not to score any goals. He was creating for his teammates who weren't able to finish the chances that he was generating. I still do get the impression that he is going to be on penalties as well. And like I said, this Brentford game is phenomenal. And looking at the projected goals, Raul Jimenez is currently 5th. Haaland, Salah, Wood, if Wood is available, because Wood might be injured. He is carrying a knock. Darwin, if he starts, which he probably will, and then Raul Jimenez, 0.52 projected goals with a 10% chance of 2 or more goals, which would be brilliant. And I really do like that Jimenez can be creative as well. He is a player, like I said, mentioned, he creates chances for his teammates as well. So it's not just about the projected goals. You have other avenues to get points for a striker like Raul compared to someone like Haaland, who is just goals, goals, goals. Speaking of goals, 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 Jamie Vardy doing quite well at the moment, actually. Yeah, over the last few game weeks, his numbers have picked up significantly. And Ipswich, when we're talking about weak defences, depending on what metric you use, Ipswich are the worst / second worst defence for those underlying numbers at the moment. So we're looking at a really nice fixture for any attacker. So I'm really happy to have players like Fulham players against Brentford. We've got Vardy against Ipswich. Really nice matchups here that I do enjoy a lot. Vardy, another penalty taker, always going to be very useful against an Ipswich team who have conceded a couple of penalties this season as well. So, can Vardy continue his good form, putting up those good numbers? Can he get another goal? Well, you've got to back him in a fixture like this to potentially get something. Should we have a quick look at his projected goals for this week? 0.42. So, yeah, he's sitting in a pretty good area there. That's actually higher than the likes of Cunha, Calvert-Lewin, Strand-Larsen, Havertz, you know, his Wissa as well. He's got a better projected goals here than a lot of the other forwards that people will be going for this week. So, I'm very happy with that. I think he can cover the fact that I don't have a Cunha or a Wood or players like that. I think he can cover there, which is nice. But just like Johnson, he is another player I'm really thinking about removing from my team in the near future, but not this game week. So there we have it. That's my starting 11. On the bench, Valdemarsen's going to sit right here. Rodgers is going to sit on the bench, and that is largely due to his fixture. I think at this point with Smith Rowe and Rodgers, you just have to play the fixture with these two guys. It's a good chance that I do bench Rodgers points this week, but it's a nice problem to have, really. The fact that I've got a midfield that is quite strong, that I have decent backup on the bench. So if I do get a random injury or an unexpected player dropping out the squad, something like that, I do have that cover ready to go, and that has been useful to me a few times this season already. So I'm happy to have Rodgers on my bench, but I do need to accept that occasionally I am going to bench Rodgers points. And I think this game week is one of those potential game weeks where that could well happen. So let's see what happens there. The odds and the projections favour Smith Rowe. I prefer Smith Rowe's fixtures, so I think I'm going to leave things as they are. But I don't know, guys. Is there anyone else you would maybe bench for Rodgers? Would you bench Johnson, perhaps? I don't know. Vardy, Raul, probably not. Would you bench Smith Rowe for Rodgers? Love to hear from you guys. Other players on my bench, Harwood-Bellis. Now, in an emergency with Gavardio, and if Gavardio does have a bad concussion or something like that, and he physically cannot play this game week, then that means that he's not going to be, getting minutes off the bench. And I think that's the difference between Gavardio and Robertson. If Robertson is benched, then he probably gets a few minutes off the bench, and then that means 1 pointers. We've already seen that this season. If Gavardio's out, he's out, and Harwood-Bellis would substitute on. Now, would I be okay with that? Against Everton at home? I know it's Southampton. I know they're a terrible defence, but you can't exactly say that Everton are a great attack. So maybe it's a very stoppable force meets a very movable object. I don't know. But there's a very good chance that maybe Harwood-Bellis could keep a clean sheet here. I mean, another thing I've noticed with Harwood-Bellis is that he is a bit of a set-piece target man, so is he going to be able to get some chances to score? I don't know. Maybe I'm just coping here, to be honest, but all I'm saying is that in a worst-case scenario, considering how poor defenders are generally in FPL at the moment, is it the worst thing if I get Harwood-Bellis off the bench rather than making transfers and taking -4s? Like, what's worse? I'd probably rather just take the Harwood-Bellis 2-pointer and move on with my life than take -4s to try and find a defender that might do quite well, particularly when I've got 2 defensive issues to address in my team. And I think it's time to address those very issues. And the priority transfer out for me has got to be Robertson because of that potential for 1-pointers. At least with Gavardio, when he's available, he has got a good chance of playing most games, has that attacking threat and everything else. Robertson, however, I think it's a very good time to remove him now for Ait-Nouri. One other thing that helped sway this decision was not just Robertson being playing the game in midweek and therefore suggesting he might be benched for the weekend. But for Ait-Nouri, he's playing against Crystal Palace. And Crystal Palace, well, they have Eze potentially injured this week. And if Eze has that injury, then Crystal Palace lose a lot of their creativity, a lot of their attacking impetus. And even though I don't really see Wolves as a good defensive team, it at least increases the chances of getting a clean sheet. And we know Crystal Palace have struggled to score goals anyway this season. So there is a chance of a clean sheet for Wolves this game week, which is something quite nice. Now, obviously, I would be half hoping for a 0-0 draw since I have Henderson in my team as well. But we do also know that Aït-Nouri has some of the best defensive numbers among defenders as well. So if we just have a look at his attacking numbers, if we just look through some of his attacking numbers, in the 9 game weeks so far, he is taking more than a shot per game, but more crucially, the vast majority of these shots are in dangerous areas. 8 shots in the box, 3 big chances. That's very high for a, well, I guess a non-set piece threat defender, I suppose. Creative numbers pretty decent as well. 11 key passes, 1 big chance created. More importantly, perhaps, he is actually getting goals, actually getting assists as well. And that is very, very useful in the world of FPL for a defender. But the biggest thing is, he's cheap. And I think that's what I like the most about him. He is cheap, 4.6 million. He has great fixtures for a long, long time now. So I can just play him every single game week, which is very useful because I don't really have too much on my bench. The one and only concern I have about Aït-Nouri is, well, this thing right here, the yellow card, because Aït-Nouri is on 4 yellow cards at the moment. If he gets a 5th yellow card, he is going to be suspended for 1 game. So I may have to go 1 game week without him, with having to bench him at some point in the next, 10 game weeks. That's okay with me. It's a small price to pay, really, when we're looking at one of the best defensive assets in the game at the moment for his price and for his value that he provides. So I think it is a small consideration, and it's an issue I may have to address later down the line. But right now, he isn't suspended. He is fine to play, and there's no guarantee he ever gets that 5th yellow card either. So let's just see what happens. If an issue comes up, we'll address it when it comes. I don't want to be playing with too much fear, because we're doing quite well at the moment. And I think playing FPL with confidence is really important, and it's something I'd like to continue to do. In terms of that captain, it is going to be Erling Haaland himself. Yep, going to give him another chance on the captain's armband. Looking through my team, I have 2 premiums, Palmer and Haaland. This is the way I'd probably like to go. Vice captain, let's just throw it on Palmer, because we do know Palmer in general is a pretty reliable FPL asset. So there we have it. There's my Game Week 10 team, 1 transfer made, and a load of money in the bank. And I suppose you're probably wondering, Dan, what are you going to do with all that money? What are you going to do with all that cash? All that cash inside your bank? I'm going to make you... We'll leave that with you. Come on, let's continue. So guys, even though I do have my wild card in the bank, and I'm sure some people will be thinking, Game Week 12 coming up, if you still have a wild card, maybe that is the time to use it. But given that I'm kind of already progressing towards a team I would want for a Game Week 12 wild card anyway, I'm not sure that I will wild card anytime soon anyway. I don't know when I'm going to wildcard, really, because of that Robertson to Aït-Nouri transfer. Because honestly, if I was on a wildcard, that would be one of the first moves I'd be making on that wildcard. So this is what my team would look like for Game Week 10. Interestingly, Harwood Bellis, 3.9 predicted points for Game Week 10, which is actually pretty decent. So if Gvardiol was unavailable, that's not so bad. If we're looking at the projections here, the predictions, that's not too bad. But going into Game Week 11, I have some big choices to make. And it's going to be really revolving around Johnson and Vardy, the 2 players that I would like to remove in the near future. And I have a lot of money in the bank. Primarily, what I would like to do is get Johnson up to Saka. And I definitely would be able to afford to do that by some margin, actually. However, Johnson plays Ipswich at home in Game Week 11. Vardy, on the other hand, plays against Manchester United away, which I don't love. We do have Rodgers on the bench, but he plays against Liverpool away, so not particularly good cover there. So I'll have a big decision to make. Johnson to Saka. Obviously, Saka is the better pick in general, and I think Saka will outscore Johnson in Game Week 11. But can I actually make up better value by removing Vardy? Who would I go for in this instance? Cunha seems a pretty obvious one, but he's not the only forward that I like right now. I do also like players like Wissa, for example. He plays Bournemouth at home in Game Week 11. Jackson is a player I would like from Game Week 12 as well. So there's lots of big decisions that I need to make, and it's very difficult to pick one out. I'm sure most of you guys will probably say go for Cunha ahead of Southampton. It's a nice jumping on point, but I'm not as convinced by Cunha as a lot of other people are. I think some of these fixtures are not actually that easy. Fulham away, Bournemouth at home, Everton away. I don't think these are fixtures where Cunha can get multiple FPL returns. I don't think Wolves are necessarily capable of scoring multiple goals in a game. And Cunha is playing a little bit deeper. His numbers aren't super high. And I do expect them to improve with better fixtures. But I don't necessarily think he is going to be at the same value for money as a player like Raul Jimenez, who I love as an FPL pick. So, is it worth spending 6.5 million on him? Do we go for Wood, who actually has bad fixtures coming up? Do we go for Wissa, who has good fixtures? Maybe in a very short term. We've got Leicester in there at least over the next few, but nothing amazing. But Brentford are the better attacking team, maybe, and Wissa plays more advanced. Questions, guys. Welbeck is the other player I am considering as well, but I wouldn't want to pick him up automatically in game week 11. 12 maybe, 13, well, that looks like a better jumping on point because we've got then Fulham, Leicester and Crystal Palace at home, which is nice. I can't decide, guys. So, thankfully, there's another game week before I need to make that decision, but I'd love to get some of your opinions. Johnson will become Saka, probably by game week 12, and I think Vardy needs to go for someone as well. It's just a case of who do I replace him with? Because there's so many choices at the moment. I can't decide. Maybe I need to find a way to get Jackson instead. Maybe that's an option for me. But there we go. Of course, using Fantasy Football Hub's My Team tool to have a look at all of this stuff. So do go check it out using the link in the description. You can still get a free trial right now. And all of the stats have also been provided by their Opta Stats tool that I have been using throughout this video in the background. So there we go, guys. That is my FPL team for Game Week 10. I think I'm looking pretty good. And I think we're going to continue with those green arrows. Feeling positive. Absolutely love it. If you enjoyed this one, well, make sure you don't get sent off and leave a like. Do subscribe if you're new around here and check out another video if you would like to. YouTube thinks you'll like that one. Check it out.